I've recently gotten a bit bored building ships in the same style over and over again, and I wanted to change things up a bit. So I thought, why don't I build something more contemporary, something long and thin and white and with a shitload of Toruses, or Tori, I don't know, whatever. This ship is far from finished though, so there isn't actually all that much to show you yet. Instead, I just want to show you a little trick that I used to make these rotors work. The first thing that came to mind when building the Tori was of course to just use two rotors like this and have the central part spinning. Super simple, but also super impractical. If you ever want to build a ship with spinny bits on it, don't do it like this. The problem here is that now the front of the ship and the back of the ship are not going to be connected anymore. They are not a single grid. And so if you have more of these, or if just something bumps into the ship, eventually they're going to get out of alignment, and then they'll just be off by like 2-3 degrees or something, and that's just absolutely horrible, I think. So there is a better way to do this, and let me just show you. So what can you do to fix this? Well, there are 3 ways, each one getting progressively more cursed than the last. But before I show you the absolutely ridiculous ways to exploit the game only to build a mere Torus, let me show you the proper way to do it first. There is one block in the game. Unfortunately, it's DLC. You can see it here. This is not 2 blocks, it's just one, the double railing. And I have the built info mod here, which allows you to see the mount points. So wherever it's yellow, you can mount it. Meaning you can simply attach a block to it, like this, or like that. So you can attach it on both sides, but there's going to be a gap in the middle, which just has the perfect width for a conveyor to fit through it. So now you can have a Torus that's going to be conveyed. You can see it here on the thruster, and it just fits through this gap so that now the front of the ship and the back of the ship are actually going to be a single grid. And because I'm using advanced rotors here, it's still going to be conveyed front to back. If you set the advanced rotors to an offset of -20 centimeters, then they're exactly 1 block tall, so this works perfectly without any clang whatsoever. This is what I've been using for the big ship here as well. I think it looks pretty okay. Only downside is that you can't walk from the front to the back anymore, because you're just gonna get smacked in the head by these tubes. There are ways to make that possible though, let me show you. This very cursed looking thing is another way to build a Torus, and it's actually all vanilla, even if it doesn't quite look like it. So you've probably noticed these blocks here, that's where the magic is. These are small grid conveyors, but the game thinks they're large grid, because these are super grid blocks. You can go into a file of a blueprint and simply change the grid size of a block and make the game think it's a large grid block. And because it was 3x3 blocks as a small grid block, it's still going to be that big in large grid. Only its physical model doesn't change, it's still small. And so now you can attach these kind of massive blocks, but still really small blocks to each other and have this massive gap in between. And the best thing is, this is even going to be conveyed. So you can see the thruster here is fueled by the tank over there. And now you have a gap that is so massive, I can just take a bunch of passages and walk from the front to the back of the ship. And the Torus arm, it's hardly an arm anymore, it's just gonna swing past. Well, super gridding is obviously an exploit. Technically, it's also a feature. They didn't remove it. They did fix it at some point, but they didn't really remove it, and they didn't really fix it. They just added an option to the game, to the world options, to disable it or enable it. So if you enable it, you can do this. If you want to know how to use the super grid exploit, I've made a video about it just recently. While this is certainly quite cursed, there is actually an even more exploity way. Let me show you that one as well. This here is an exploit I like to call phantom connection. There's actually a way you can remove blocks without the game noticing they are actually gone. So the blocks that are missing here are really missing. There's nothing there. I could just place a block here, but the game still thinks the conveyor block here is attached to the central rotating part. It hasn't realized that this connection is long gone. If you delete blocks in the blueprint file instead of in-game, you can trick the game this way. And the best part about this, it's actually still conveyed despite there being no conveyors whatsoever. I think this is pretty crazy, and I'm surprised it works at all. But I guess it kind of makes sense, because why should the game constantly check if a grid is still connected? It only really has to do that when something is missing or destroyed. So if I delete a block, suddenly it will disconnect and the blocks will just start to fly away. See, this one is now gone, and that one as well. So now it's not connected anymore, and they won't reattach or anything. But as long as you don't remove a block, they stay perfectly connected. You can build on them, you can do all sorts of stuff, and it's going to be conveyed, which is absolutely crazy. Of course, this is highly impractical, because as soon as something happens, everything just detaches and breaks. So I wouldn't ever use this. It's still very fun, I think.